Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town Council special meeting for Tuesday, March 7th. If you will kindly rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. So we are going to move on to public comment. This portion of the meeting is specifically set aside for comments from the public, who are asked to limit their comments to 2 minutes. Any person interested in providing public comment should email publicmeetings@rockyhillct.gov and will be provided with a link to attend the meeting remotely and instructions on how to participate. Mr. Carmentino, would you like the public to go first? Who's here? Okay.
Thank you. Ed Ciccarello, 40 Riverview Road. First, I want to give thanks to Charlie Wisnowski, who has consistently provided critical information to this council and town manager. I want to say up front that I agree with everything he has put forth, and you can, and I hope you do, make this agreement more better. Tonight, however, I want to voice my concern over the line being blurred between this council, town manager, and our Land Use Commission, Planning and Zoning. I attended every planning and zoning hearing on this Kelson Row project, watching the commissioners labor over the details, demanding commercial buildings at this location. They were following our plan of conservation and development, which calls for mixed use in the town center district. Now, this latest proposal you have states that one of the commercial buildings, building number 11, can be built last 2 years after the certificate of occupancy of March 2026. And even worse, the language states that all the developer has to do by 2028 is, quote, commence construction, end quote. My concern is that this agreement in its present state weakens the planning and zoning approval, blurs the line. In my opinion, and I think Charlie would agree, you need to add language to this agreement to have that commercial building, building number 11, built first or at the same time, and have a certificate of occupancy date for it as well. Otherwise, all I see is another town center west in our future. In a press conference recently at the site, Mayor Murata stated that this development will be, quote, the very beginning of the downtown that does not exist in Rocky Hill, end quote. The mixed use is what is creating the downtown, no? If building number 11 is built last or not built at all, what happens to that South Pocket Park? Will that brick patio not be built? And will the gazebo next to building number 11 not be built until 2028? Again, blurred lines. Planning and zoning commissioners, volunteers just like you and me, worked extremely hard to get an optimum plan for this sensitive location. They provided a number of concessions on this project: the height of the buildings, the setback from the road to the buildings. But most importantly, they focused on following the plan of conservation and development to get mixed-use commercial at this location, to create the beginning of the downtown area. So your agreement must honor that work. The bottom line is that this agreement, as proposed, in my opinion, is giving away too much and the town is getting too little. I ask that you strengthen the language in this agreement to honor the planning and zoning approval, avoid blurring the line, and follow the plan of conservation and Charlie Wisnowski's comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
He's not giving my minutes. And I didn't prepare anything. So, Shauna Wisnowski, 670 Old Main Street, Rocky Hill. You've had to listen to my husband probably more than you ever want to, but he knows what he's talking about. He's had 50 years of being a commercial appraiser. He's been a banker. He's been in both ends of any deal, and he knows what he's talking about. If he thinks it's a bad deal, it probably is. He cares. He's doing this because, one, he has that experience. Two, he knows you guys don't have the time to do all the nitpicking research and find all the details. And most importantly, he cares about the town. So, listen to what he has to say.
Thank you.
Charlie Wisnowski, 670 Old Main Street. We've been here a lot. You better make a decision soon. Otherwise, you'll keep hearing from us. I believe that the annual real estate taxes revenues for the town of Rocky Hill are approximately $75 million. Not receiving 740,000, 800,000, whatever number you want to use, for up to 7 to 10 years is a significant amount of money for that period of time. It's over 1% of our current level of tax revenues from real estate. Being told that there is no room in the deal that you're working on for an annual increase in payment by Belfonte to the town of Rocky Hill is incredibly insulting. Your acceptance of this response so far has been disappointing. Save face. At least get an annual increase equal to the mill rate increase that every other resident and business will pay. It is highly unlikely that another developer would not take the deal as it has evolved at this point for at least half of the proposed abatement. I attended many, many planning and zoning meetings in which developers said, we'll build the apartments right now, but the market won't support the retail and the office. And planning and zoning said, no, that doesn't meet the conditions of the zone. So this is it. Please, at least 5 of you act for the 20,000 current residents of Rocky Hill. The current residents who are investors. Either they own their home or they're invested in all the activities that take place in Rocky Hill with children. This is sold as high income, people who don't want to purchase a home, won't have any kids and so on. I'm not sure why that we think that is so desirable that we'll forego what the rest of us have to pay to have them here to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Town Manager Carpentino has some public comments that came in, probably, I'm assuming via email.
Yes.
Okay, so he's going to read.
Email and print, yes.
He's going to read those into the record.
This letter is from John Chunas, 40 Deerfield Run. Good evening. My name is John Chunas. I live at 40 Deerfield Run in Rocky Hill. I've been a resident and a taxpayer in town for 48 years. I am unable to attend the town council meeting tonight, but wish to have my opinion on the proposed tax abatement for the Kelson Row project included for town council member review. My comments that I made at the town council meeting of February 6, 2023 still stand, that I believe the requested tax abatement is excessive and oppose its approval. I have two additional concerns that I would like to discuss and address tonight. First, The total amount of lost tax revenue over the duration of the requested tax abatement is listed as $6.6 million for the tax abatement table plan of January 18th, of the January 18th draft resolution prepared by Town Manager Ray Carpentino. This is roughly the same amount of money that the town spent on the recent purchase of the Straska Farm, which required a referendum as being a significant capital expenditure. While the town council can approve tax abatements without a referendum, seeing that the requested tax abatement proposal is so significant, it would be prudent for the town council to take some additional time and send out a mail and survey to town residents similar to what was done with the development of the town's affordable housing plan. A townwide survey wasn't required for the development of that plan, but being so important of an issue, the survey is still performed as the town council realized citizen input was imperative. The results of that survey show the level of public support for the various attributes surveyed and was an excellent approach in the development of that plan. I commend the council for their actions in producing that excellent report. Last year's town budget was $79 million. The requested Kelson Road tax abatement of $744,000 per year constitutes approximately 1% of the overall budget. That is a significant amount of money that the town will be giving up. Money that can be used for various town programs that are expected to increase in required funding. In my opinion, that is absurd. I am surprised that the town council is even considering it. If the tax abatement is approved as currently requested, that loss of revenue will have to be made up by further increases in everyone else's taxes. In the past few weeks, as I come across other folks in town, they know very little about the project, with the exception that they have seen the old Ames building taken down. Most people in town don't have time in their lives to scour the town web page for all of the official meeting agendas, etc. When I mentioned the dollar amount of the requested tax abatement, they replied, "That's crazy." Giving up 1% of the town's overall tax revenue stream for 10 years is so significant that it warrants that the town council make all taxpayers aware of that by survey and obtain their input prior to moving forward with a decision. That survey can present all of the benefits of that project. It's expected to provide to the community as well as the estimated additional tax burden placed on taxpayers during the tax abatement period. Once public comments are received, the town council can judge which direction to go. This will provide a valuable metric. We may find that 70% of the town supports the tax abatement as is, or we may find that 70% do not support it and prefer to do something else with the property. The town council will then be able to make an informed decision on how best to serve the interests of the town residents. Second, the proposal for the project calls for 213 apartments, 10% which will be designated as affordable. It is not clear to me that this meets the requirements of affordable housing for purposes of the state's affordable housing appeals procedure. The definitions of affordable housing listed in the town's affordable housing plan specifies 1, assisted housing units, 2, deed-restricted housing units, 3, households using tenant rental assistance certificates, and 4, households utilizing CHFA or USDA mortgages. The town council should take whatever actions are necessary to confirm that this project meets these requirements and perhaps insist that the 10% of affordable units are deed restricted. Otherwise, if it doesn't, we will lose state credit for this project. In closing, I would like to repeat a statement made by President Biden during his recent State of the Union address when mentioning our federal tax code that allows corporations to pay no income tax. Pay your fair share. The same applies here. Thank you for allowing me to express my opinion.
Thank you.
This correspondence is from Neil Frutuoso, 10 Belden Lane. Dear Town Council and Town Manager, I am writing to express my concerns over the potential tax abatement for the developers of the Ames property. It seems most tax residents do not favor more apartments, and that one of the major drawbacks of this development was the increase in tax revenue for the, I'm sorry, let me repeat that. It seems most tax residents do not favor more apartments, and that one of the major draws of this development was the increase in tax revenue for the town. In the last meeting, there were 4 factors highlighted by Mr. Belfonte to outline the need for this tax abatement. I will cover my concerns with each below. 1, affordable housing. Belfonte says they lose money on those affordable units. While they may lose money on these units, 10% of affordable housing is a minimum standard set by the state. Additionally, this is not news to Mr. Belfonte. It was part of the ongoing discussions with the town planning and zoning. If Mr. Belfonte couldn't be profitable enough with the 10%, he should have noted it then and not agreed to the 10% just to get planning and zoning approval. The taxpayers in the town should not have to subsidize Mr. Belfonte's profits. 2, environmental remediation. The town manager noted in the January 9th Economic Development Subcommittee meeting that out of the 35 commercial realtors that he had worked with on this over the years, that all have stalled because of the costs associated with the environmental cleanup of the redevelopment. Based on that statement, the environmental cleanup was not news to Mr. Belfonte, and if the costs associated with the cleanup were too high, he should have stalled and backed out like every other developer instead of yesing the town and assuming he would receive a large tax abatement. Additionally, it is well known that there was a brownfield grant that was issued for this development of nearly $1 million. In the same January 9th meeting, the town manager also pointed out that if Mr. Belfonte was to walk away, any other developer who stepped in would want a tax abatement. Why? Mr. Belfonte noted they spent over $2 million counting already, meaning any other developer would have saved those costs, making it so they should not need tax abatements. 3, because they were using materials that are better than anyone else's. This is laughable. This is not a reason for a tax abatement. That is their business model, and certainly not reason for an abatement or something that the town of Rocky Hill or its taxpayers should fund. 4, loan approval conditions. Mr. Belfonte noted in the January 9th meeting that the loan he got for this project is only approved with the tax abatement. This raises a number of questions. 1, why would Mr. Belfonte apply for a loan that required a tax abatement that he wasn't sure he would get? 2, what financial institution would approve a loan contingent on a $6.9 million tax abatement without seeing approval for the $6.9 million tax abatement? This opens a lot of risk to them as a lender if the abatement isn't approved. 3, how did Mr. Belfonte know the total amount of the tax abatement to subtract from the total of this loan when the town manager didn't formally make this recommendation via memorandum to the Economic Development Subcommittee until January 6th of 2023? One would assume he had his loan secured and finalized before breaking ground. I also wanted to touch on the town manager's projections of the $9.8 million the development would bring in discretionary income to the town. He used a formula taking 70% of the estimated average income of all units to calculate, assuming every penny that falls outside of the 30% allocated to housing would be spent in town in discretionary income. Unfortunately, that's not how life works. People have car payments, take vacations, shop and eat in other towns in addition to Rocky Hill. Many also have hobbies and interests that are likely not all available in town. Not to mention, he used a full apartment count of 213 units when we know that 21 of them will be affordable units with lower incomes and lower discretionary income. This number grossly inflates the economic benefit the town will see once the development is fully leased. Even if we did get all $9.8 million, we would be giving most of it back with this estimated $6.9 million abatement, which I feel is low. More on that later. A question I have is, have any projections been made that highlight the number of residents that will be new to Rocky Hill, any development like this? The calculations used by the town manager also assumes every resident will move from out of town, which I find highly unlikely. Additionally, Mr. Greenspan noted in the January 9th meeting that the project would be bringing in an estimated $700,000 in applications and permit fees to the town. I highly doubt that those fees are in place just so we can give them back and more. We should not be okay with giving away 6.9 plus million in tax income because we are getting $700,000 in application and permit fees that the developer was also aware they would need to pay as part of this process. Those scales are tipped greatly in favor of Mr. Belfonte. Lastly, I would like to know why the projected abatement of $6.9 million assumes the mill rate and appraised value of the property will not increase in the next 12 years. Is the mill rate or appraised value of this property capped or fixed? If so, I think it would only be fair that the taxpayers funding this abatement get the same treatment, the mill rates and appraised values of their property fixed and capped for the next 12 years. I'm going to go ahead and assume the town has not capped or fixed mill rates and appraised personal property values. With that being said, this estimated $6.9 million is not accurate of what the town will truly be giving away. Before anything is approved, I think this calculation should be revisited so the residents of this town can get a much more accurate number of what they will be subsidizing for Mr. Belfonte. For the reasons outlined above, I urge the town council not to approve this abatement. I don't truly believe that Mr. Belfonte needs this abatement to move forward with this development and make it successful. If he did need it, he would stop work until knowing the abatement was approved. He wouldn't continue demo day in and day out unless he already knows that the abatement will be approved, and this is just a formality. I don't believe this is the case, and hope the town council listens to the residents of this town. Sincerely, Neil Frutuoso, 10 Belden Lane.
Do you have any more, Ray?
Yeah, I have a book.
Because really, it's like, okay, because like we're going way, way, way over the minutes.
That's all I have. Only
Okay.
these two comments.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on. Section 3, discussion possible action, Kelson Row, parenthetically Ames, tax abatement. Do you want to introduce anything?
Do I want to introduce anything?
Yeah, the topic, or do you want to just go right into discussion?
I think we should just go right into discussion.
Okay, do you want to introduce anything?
No, we could go to discussion.
Okay.
Michael,
No.
developer want to speak? No?
I don't think so. No. Okay, so, do we want to put a motion on the table so then we can have the discussion?
You can do that.
I have it up if you want me to. Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to accept the business development incentive agreement between Rocky Hill Gateway LLC and the town of Rocky Hill, Connecticut. March 6, 2023 is the date of the draft. Whereas Rocky Hill Gateway LLC is a special purpose entity formed by Belfonte Companies LLC for the purpose of the remediation and redevelopment of the former Ames headquarters property located at 2418 Main Street and the former T&T Structural Inc. property located at 1 Dividend Road. Rocky Hill Gateway LLC is a private, for-profit, limited liability company headquartered in Hamden, Connecticut, and whereas Belfonte Companies LLC, headquartered in Hamden, is a family-owned organization focused on investment, development, and management of real estate, playing a significant and a multifaceted role in the real estate market. Belfonte Companies LLC has owned and managed millions of square feet of real estate over the years, completing billions of dollars worth of transactions. And whereas Belfonte Companies under the Rocky Hill Gateway LLC purchased the former Ames headquarters property located at 2418 Main Street, Assessor ID parcel 10-184, and the former T&T Structural Inc. property located at 1 Dividend Road, Assessor ID parcel 10-183, which properties have been merged together to form one parcel to redevelop to the site into a mixed-use development named Kelson Row, herein referred to as The Project, consisting of 213 apartments, 10% designated as affordable, 11,067 square feet of office space, and 9,959 square feet of retail with associated site improvements. And whereas the two parcels, 2418 Main Street and 1 Dividend Road, have been merged together, forming one parcel identified as 2418 Main Street, Assessor ID 10-184. And whereas on April 5th, 2021, the Town Council passed a resolution agreeing to partner with Belafonte Companies, LLC, for the purpose of applying for the State of Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, Office of Brownfield Remediation and Development, herein referred to as OBRD, granted to help fund the demolition and environmental remediation required for the project. And whereas on December 12, 2022, the town was awarded a grant in the amount of $999,000 from OBRD to help fund demolition and environmental remediation activities associated with the project. And whereas the direct recipient of the OBRD grant is the town of Rocky Hill, grant funds will be a pass-through in the form of a grant from the town of Rocky Hill Gateway LLC to Rocky Hill Gateway LLC pursuant to a sub-recipient agreement by and between the town of Rocky Hill and Rocky Hill Gateway LLC in form and substance satisfactory to the State Department of Economic and Community Development, DECD. Rocky Hill Gateway LLC will be the owner of the project and will be responsible for the implementation of the project. And whereas on March 3rd, 2022, the Planning and Zoning Commission approved the site plan special permit application of Belafonte Companies, LLC, for a mixed-use development of 213 apartments, 93 one-bedroom, 122 bedroom, with 10% designated as affordable, 11,067 square feet of office space, and 9,959 square feet of retail with associated site improvements on approximately 12.65 acres for property located at 2418 Main Street and 1 Dividend Road in the TC Town Center zoning project. Finding the proposal complies with the Rocky Hill zoning regulations and the town plan of conservation and development. And whereas the project site has been idle for over 20 years, its vacancy and continued decay have prevented investment in this section of Main Street from realizing its full potential. There is a high probability the project will be a catalyst for continued investment along the Silestein Highway corridor. And whereas it is estimated the project will generate approximately 200 temporary construction jobs over the 3-year period, and for the residential portion, a minimum of 9 to 12 permanent jobs. It is also estimated that jobs will be also created as businesses occupy the 21,026 square feet of non-residential component of the project. And whereas the current annual real estate taxes generated from the project site are $62,583 based on the current assessed value of $1,812,880. And whereas it is estimated the project at completion will have a minimum appraised value of $30 million, generating a minimum of $744,000 in annual real estate taxes based on the current town's mill rate as of the date of hereof. And whereas additional taxes will be generated from motor vehicles, estimated 454 vehicles, and personal property as a result of site amenities and business enterprises. And whereas it is estimated building permit fees may be $700,000. And whereas, based on area median income and occupancy statistics extrapolated to specifics of the project, it is estimated the project has the potential to infuse the local economy with $9.8 million of additional discretionary income from occupants of the project. And whereas Rocky Hill Gateway LLC is requesting a 10-year tax abatement to be applied to the increase in assessed value as a result of real estate improvements resulting from the project. And whereas Rocky Hill Gateway LLC has stated a tax abatement is imperative for the project to be completed as approved, and whereas At its January 9th, 2023 meeting, the Economic Development Subcommittee of the Town Council voted to refer a tax abatement request of Rocky Hill Gateway LLC to the Town Council, as specified in the memorandum from the Town Manager dated January 6, 2023, for review and consideration. And whereas the Town Council finds the project proposal by Rocky Hill Gateway LLC satisfies the eligibility criteria specified in the town's business incentive policy. Now, therefore, pursuant to the Town of Rocky Hill Business Incentive Policy and Section 12-65B of the Connecticut General Statutes, the Town Council hereby approves the request of Rocky Hill Gateway LLC for a tax abatement and authorizes the town manager to execute a tax abatement agreement between the Town of Rocky Hill and Rocky Hill Gateway LLC as follows. I, with respect to the October 2022 grand list and continuing on each grand list thereafter until such time as the project shall be substantially complete, the assessed value of the property shall be fixed at $2,259,887, the base assessment. The real property taxes on the property for those years shall be fixed at $80,000, effective upon the execution of the tax abatement agreement. 2I. Commencing on the grand list date, October 1st, 2025, covering the tax period from July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2027, referred to as the initial year, and continuing for 6 successive grand lists thereafter, 100% of real property taxes payable to the town in excess of the base assessment shall be abated. III, with respect to the grand list of the 7th year following the initial year, real property taxes for the property in the amount of 20% of the real property taxes calculated at the mill rate then in effect on the then assessed value of the property shall be payable to Rocky Hill Gateway LLC, shall be payable by Rocky Hill Gateway LLC to the town as a result of an 80% abatement of taxes. And 5, with respect to the grand list of the 8th year following the initial year, real estate taxes for the property in the amount of 40% of the real property taxes calculated at the mill rate then in effect on and then assessed value of the property shall be payable by Rocky Hill Gateway LLC to the town as a result of an 60% abatement of taxes. Subject to the following stipulations. 1, this tax abatement agreement, the agreement, as approved by the Town Council and containing the material terms set forth herein shall be reviewed by the town attorney and executed by both parties and recorded in the Rocky Hill Land Records not later than March 15th, 2023. The town manager may approve the extension of this deadline, but is under no obligation to authorize such extension. 2, the approval of this agreement shall be contingent upon compliance with the Site Development Plan Special Permit application of Belfonte Companies, LLC, for a mixed-use development of 213 apartments, 93 one-bedroom, 122 bedroom, with 10% designated as affordable, 11,067 square feet of office space, and 9,959 square feet of retail with associated site improvements on approximately 12.65 acres for property located at 2418 Main Street and 1 Dividend Road, as approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on March 3rd, 2022, and as duly amended by such Planning and Zoning Commission during the term of the agreement, and as duly amended by such Planning and Zoning Commission during the term of the agreement, the project. 3, construction of the project shall be completed and shall receive a temporary or permanent certificate of occupancy not later than March 2nd, 2026, with the exception of building number 11 as shown on the approved site development plan, for which Rocky Hill Gateway LLC shall have up to 5 years from the execution of this agreement to commence construction on this building. Town Council may approve any extension of these timeframes, but is under no obligation to authorize any extension. 4, assessment values for years 8 and 9 to be based on the appraised value of year 8 as of the applicable grand list and mill rate only if appraised value is 30 million or more. 5, absent authorized modifications or extensions, failure to comply with the timeframes herein specified following lapse of applicable notice and cure periods may result in immediate termination of this agreement and the full amount of the tax, including accrued interest that would otherwise be due, shall immediately become due and payable. In the event of such noncompliance, the town shall provide Rocky Hill Gateway LLC 30 days written notice of such noncompliance and allows 60 days to cure such noncompliance. Rocky Hill Gateway LLC shall not be responsible for delays in meeting the timeframes herein specified which have occurred without its fault or negligence, to the extent due to strikes, lockouts, or other labor or industrial disturbance, civil disturbance, act of public enemy, terrorism, war, riot, sabotage, blockade, embargo, lightning, earthquake, fire, casualty, extreme storm, hurricane, tornado, flood, washout, explosion, pandemic, declaration of national or state emergency. Usually severe weather which affects the time of the required performance hereunder, but only to the extent and only so long as Rocky Hill Gateway LLC or the mortgage lender for the project is not able, after using commercially responsible efforts to obtain substantial services, substitute services, materials, or equipment of equal quality, provided further that the purpose of this provision lack the funds, shall not be deemed to be used as a cause beyond its control. 6, if Rocky Hill Gateway LLC fails to comply with the payment of real estate taxes upon or prior to the date real estate taxes become delinquent, the town shall provide Rocky Hill Gateway LLC and its mortgage lender written notice of such noncompliance and allow 30 days of 30 days within which to cure such noncompliance. If any delinquent real estate taxes are not paid within such cure period, the town council may, at its discretion, terminate this agreement, and the full amount of tax, including accrued interest, shall become due and payable. 7, this agreement shall not be subject to assignment, transfer, or sale without the consent of the town council. Rocky Hill Gateway LLC may not assign its rights and obligations under this agreement except with permission of the Rocky Hill Town Council, which permission shall not be unreasonably withheld or delayed. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the town of Rocky Hill, the town and Rocky Hill Gateway LLC agree that Rocky Hill Gateway LLC may transfer and convey its rights or obligations hereunder in whole or in part to its lender, and its lender may assign its rights and interests in the agreement without permission of the Rocky Hill Town Council to any subsidiary or affiliate of such lender and the Rocky Hill Gateway LLC, or to any company into which the Rocky Hill Gateway LLC is merged or which results from the merger of Rocky Hill Gateway LLC, or with any other entity so long as Belafonte Companies or one or more of its principals, partners, or owners controls the majority interest in the management and decision-making of such entity, or as long as the transferring property owner demonstrates to the town council that the transferee has a good reputation and the necessary skill and experience, is well capitalized, and evidences a strong record of success in building and managing similar developments. 8, all terms of the provision of the agreement shall be binding on the insurer and inure to the benefit of all successors and signees of the parties hereto. And finally, 9, the agreement is contingent upon the aggregate costs of improvements for the project as specified in stipulation 2 of this agreement being not less than $30 million. Failure of Rocky Hill Gateway LLC to meet the aggregate costs of improvements shall render this agreement null and void, and Rocky Hill Gateway LLC shall be responsible for and shall pay all taxes, including accrued interest, otherwise due the town and associated legal expenses.
Very good. I don't think we're going to do anything else. We're going to second that.
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion.
Just a quick clarifying question. On the agreement itself, as Ed was reading it in, I was kind of following along. We note under the now therefore, where we have sections, Roman numerals 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it talks about periods, in terms of the abatement period. It mentions the seventh year where the abatement is going to be 80%, and then 4 says the abatement is 60%. There's no mention of year 9 or when it ends, and then under the subject to following stipulations, number 4, it talks about the values of 8 and 9. So
I think we just had this same exact question the other day. Alan and I went through this. So I think, as Mona explained to us, if you continue to read your sentence, because I don't have mine in front of me, I think it says the 7th year after the first year, something like that. So theoretically, you're in year 8. And then it jives with paragraph 4, because we had that same question.
It's the first, after the initial or the base year after such. So it is a 9-year abatement if you read through it. It's spelled out, it's sequenced as a 9-year abatement.
okay, and so 8 and 9 are the same percentage, or does it go 60-40?
Right, it's the confusion lies in the grand list year, which is tax year. You know, the grand list of the 8th year is actually the tax year of the 9th year. Right.
So what is the abatement percentage for year 8 and 9?
80 and
80 and 60.
So it goes 7 is 80, and then, well, I guess just to simplify the schedule, 1 through 6 is 100.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Years 1 through 6 is 100. And then 7
1 through
is
7.
1 through 7 is 100, then it goes 80 and 60.
Yes.
So year 7 is really year 8, and year 8 is really year 9.
Grand list year 7.
I mean, they're,
Yeah,
to make
yeah.
it simple, yeah. Yes.
Other than the 80-something thousand.
Okay, so Counselor Thoreau, you want to start?
I'm going to defer to Counselor O'Sullivan and reserve my right to speak after him, if I may.
Hey, thank you. I first want to echo a specific concern that was alluded to in public comment tonight, and that is in paragraph 3, which allows construction to be delayed for building number 11, which I believe is the restaurant building. It doesn't have to even commence until 5 years from now without any stipulation as to when that construction will be completed. This whole project was sold as mixed use. The most prominent public amenity element to it is a restaurant or whatever other type of retail component there may be there. And I find it very concerning, this proposal to kick the can down the road on that very critical element of it as proposed here. I think that's very problematic, and it's something that the council should not support. Aside from that, for a specific concern, I want to voice much broader concerns. I know there's been talk about precedents for other types of tax abatements we've done in the past, which have been commercial properties, pretty much office buildings. I do not think that those precedents have much relevance at all to this type of a project. Those are commercial enterprises, office space that, compared to an apartment complex here with an anticipated population of about 450 people, have a trivial impact on demand for town services. When you compare the people who come in and work 9 to 5 or whatever during the office hours compared to people who live in this town, and you compare the demand for town services, it's truly apples and oranges, not a fair comparison. When you have an additional population here that's being proposed, first of all, one estimate is 15 school children. If we take that at face value, if we apply the approximate per head expense that the town spends to school our children of about $18,000 per child, that right there is about a $270,000 expense being imposed on the town by this project. And again, you go down the list of the other types of services that dwellers make use of compared to people here just during the day for office hours. At the opposite end of the spectrum from the school children, you have, as a major demographic being targeted here, empty nesters and retirees. So we can foresee significant additional demand for things like the use of the senior center, senior services, and the like. go down the gamut of other services that we provide to people who live here that are very rarely used by office dwellers, whether it's emergency medical services, social services, I mentioned senior services, parks and recreation programs, the library, go down the list. So when you look at the burden being imposed upon town services by this type of project and the need for tax revenue to go along with it to offset that burden, you can't compare it to office space. So I believe that any comparisons or references to those other earlier abatements are completely inapt here. I think that this type of a proposal for this type of project requires a much greater degree of scrutiny as to reasonableness. And I've touched on this before. We need to look at, I have no illusion about how challenging and difficult this project has been. I know that the property has laid fallow for 20 years or so. We know the main reason for it is that the tremendous expense and uncertainty that goes with removing that huge concrete bunker and the acres and acres of asphalt, whatever environmental surprises may be underneath. I get it. And I recognize and I appreciate these developers for taking on that burden and taking on that risk after 20 years of false starts. I believe the extraordinary expenses associated with that are fair game for a tax abatement. And so when I look at the breakdown of what are claimed to be extraordinary costs, I see net of the almost $1 million being contributed by the state, costs associated with the with environmental remediation, removal of buildings, et cetera, of about $1.7 million or so. I can easily get behind a tax abatement for that amount. I would even tack on a bonus for some entrepreneurial risk to go with that. So if you bump it up by 50%, maybe $2.5 million or so. That's a number I could live with. But when I look at the other claimed extraordinary expenses here, supposedly to justify a tax giveaway of at least $7 million here, I'm just not saying it. I see that they're going to provide a couple of pocket parks. Well, okay, but not really, because if you're making the town pay for it and then some, you're not really giving it to us, are you? Design elements, one of the comments read into the record alluded to that they want a credit for the quality of the materials. No, that's your business model. You're upscale, you market yourself as luxury apartments, you set your rents accordingly. That's your expense, it's not the town's expense. Traffic alleviation, traffic light, et cetera, those are all externalities from the project. That should be the builder's expense, it should not be the town's expense. The $1.2 million for hardscape for the plaza area. Why would the town pay for that? I mean, plazas, we saw the horror of plazas from urban renewal in the 1960s and 70s, these vast concrete wastelands where nothing happens. That's not an amenity the town should pay for. If you want to use it for outdoor dining at a restaurant, okay, but oh wait, we don't really want the restaurant. We don't want to start on that for 5 years. Not buying it. So I believe that this abatement that's being proposed, and we haven't really been given credible numbers for what it adds up to in foregone revenue, but it seems to me about $7 million or so, I think is way too rich. It needs to be tied to, as I've said, some reasonable connection to the truly extraordinary expenses and challenges associated with this site. I've laid out the ones that I think would be fair. And so in summary then, I think an ask in the range of $2.5 million or so, based on the numbers that I'm looking at here and willing to take at face value, something like that would be reasonable. But the amount that's being asked for here, there's no justification provided for it. There's no rationale. To me, it's just a giveaway without an adequate showing. My mindset as a taxpayer is, you're a taxpayer, pay your taxes. If you want a break from that principle, make your case. To me, the case has not been made, and so I will be voting against this proposal.
Thank you. Councilor Malero, would you like to go next?
I don't want to oversimplify this. There's good arguments gone back and forth. But again, I'm going to go back to 21 years of property sitting there, nothing being done. We're in a position where something's being done. And based on the timelines, we're going to have an amazing, positive, inspirational point where the town can actually be very happy about what we've accomplished. Now, granted, looking at the abatement schedule, looking at the timelines, we could nitpick at that based on shaving off some of it or half of it. But in the end, the question is, how much longer is it going to be? How much more do we want out of this, and what's the value add to that? My opinion is that for today, I'm in agreement of moving forward with this because of the fact that is there a value that we're going to gain at the end based on how much we're going to shave, right? I just don't see any more that we can do today based on the value that we're going to get in the end, considering that's been sitting here for 21 years.
Councillor Duff?
Sure. I'd like to thank everybody, including the developers who are here today and have been engaged as part of this process. It has not been easy. I think the challenge is everybody liking the project but having concerns with the deal. One of the well, actually, I do want to. I had a number of a question from the public was asked to me about, and I think it may have come up during planning and zoning. Ray, what is the impact looking at other similar facilities on EMS and emergency services calls? Is that by looking at Altair and other similar places, do we see a substantial increase in costs where we think that even might exceed the amount that we paying in taxes?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the ambulance or EMS or the number of calls. However, during the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing, the police chief during the departmental review indicated that there are no police impact concerns with this development.
And the other piece about the other, we've had a lot of information on state grants, is that the work that we talked about, extending Center Cemetery Green and sidewalks on Glastonbury Ave, is that contingent upon this project being done, or is that a separate item that's going to happen either way?
No, those two, the sidewalks on Glastonbury Avenue and Dividend Road, Town Green expansion, are independent, and those projects are moving forward as we speak. Hopefully, we'll be meeting with DOT on both, hopefully, if we can find contact.
Thanks. I'll try to keep things brief. I know we've had a lot of conversations already, and a lot of folks are tired. And the ancient Romans had a saying about business that you shear the sheep, you don't skin it. And I do feel a little bit like a skinned sheep at this point, where some of this process has gone. I think it's been challenging to have the process has been challenging the way it's been brought up to us. We had a very tight window where we needed to make a quick decision on a rate lock, and then we kind of went away for a month, and now we're back under that gun again. I do wish we had some more time to negotiate. I don't know if here we are actually at the best and final. It is something where I agree that the schedule is pretty aggressive, particularly when we look at other developments. Cromwell, the schedule of the abatement for Cromwell Belfonte was also about 10 years. This one's 9 years, but it's also a different project, but we're also getting an influx of state money. So understanding that not every project is unique, there are some comparable numbers, and I think we are an outlier here. And one thing that I would like to put on the record is that this is an outlier project. With the abatement is approved or not. It's not something where suddenly it'll become a standard for our town. This is a very unique site at the center of our town that has the potential to be transformative, establish a new downtown, and it had a very distressed asset on there. So hopefully, if it does go through, we won't suddenly see a flood of folks looking for similar abatements, because I don't think we'd look at it the same way. What I would like to raise for consideration is changing the schedule for the last 3 years from 100, 80, and 60 to 75, 50, and 30. That would increase the total or generate some additional revenue for the town of about $552,000 across that time period. It would be, in the last 2 years, an extra $0.1 of a mil which doesn't sound an awful lot, but we put a lot of work into that budget to get a tenth of a mil.
That tenth of a mil kills us.
Yeah, every time. And we had a person who came up and asked about an SRO. Well, that could be funding for an SRO. That could be funding for something operational, or, it could be actually people's taxes not going up, which would be great. I'm not sure if the developers will plan on speaking at the end, but that's something I would like to raise for consideration. If there was flexibility to do that, I think that's something that would help sell a little bit more to the taxpayers. That was my request for consideration, is that we get a little bit more. Even just focusing another tenth of a mil would help us out in the budget. We know how tough it's going to be. It's not going to get easier moving forward, and so let's see if we can get a little bit more for our buck.
I didn't mean to not go back to you, Councilor Thoreau, so your turn.
Thank you. I figured you'd get to me eventually. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm okay with the project itself, and I'm okay with the concept of an abatement, even a long one, if it's warranted. Unfortunately, in this case, I don't believe it is warranted. First of all, the developer has already received a benefit from the planning and zoning in that it relaxed a couple of its zoning requirements to accommodate the proposal. Also, as Councilor Sullivan eloquently expressed, many of the, quote, alleged extraordinary costs really should not be included in the abatement. And while the retail business and retail portion may warrant an extended abatement of some sort, the residential really does not. Part of the benefits that we were told we would have was the taxes from the 454 vehicles, and another would be the disposable income that would be coming from these residents. So clearly, they anticipate that the units will be rented. So probably within a year or so of the completion of construction, they're going to be receiving significant income from those rentals. So I think that any abatement should then be reduced to recognize those incomes and additional reductions in abatements for every year thereafter. So in summation, I cannot support this abatement proposal at this time because I don't believe it's in the best interest of the taxpayers of the town. And I think the town can and should renegotiate a more equitable deal for the taxpayers before we vote to approve.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Councilor Levine?
Don't call me. No. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few comments. Some of these are reiteration of what I said during a prior meeting and some are new. But just to talk about the abatement itself, we should always just keep in mind the abatement is simply a negotiated incentive for the developer to build in town. We can talk about whether the expenses are worthwhile or not worthwhile for the abatement. The fact of the matter is they're trying to get as much as they can. We're trying to give as little as we have to in order to have a development done here. It's a negotiated document. It's a negotiated amount. It's been thoroughly negotiated from everything I've heard, and we're now at a go, no-go point of whether we're going to move forward or not. I keep hearing about the $7 million lost revenue amount, and it kind of reminded me of something, of another $7 million amount. The $7 million amount we're talking about tonight is revenue we don't have to lose to begin with. If we don't develop this, we don't get a portion of that $7 million this year, next year, the year after that, and et cetera, okay? But I do remember a $7 million amount we paid for something called the Straska Farm, which was real money that we paid. We're also paying for remediation costs, and we have no chance of property tax revenue in perpetuity on that property. So I'm a little confused that we're concerned all of a sudden about losing money revenue we don't get anyway, but we're okay with spending that amount of money so we can no longer get revenue on that property. So that's a concern of mine. One comment was made about, and this is more just about mathematics as opposed to maybe about this topic, and it's funny, this came up during the talk about Straska Farm. The cost per child in the school system, when they say it's $18,000 a child, that's an average cost. That's not the incremental cost per child. If 5 children moved out of town and no longer went to the school system, we don't save $90,000. A tremendous amount of that is fixed cost. It's probably about a couple thousand a child for incremental costs going up or down. So just so we all understand, we can discuss about how many children it is plus or minus, but just so we have the facts on the table, that's not the way accounting and dollars work. Okay. There's also a topic that kind of gets overlooked, and I brought this up before, that there's a drainage issue in that area for residents, and I guess I would call it behind that property. I'm not sure if I'm classifying it properly, but they've all come in and said they very much need this to be done because it is really poorly done as far as rainwater drainage in the area. So this is an added benefit that doesn't get, I think, talked about enough. As I said, no developer is coming in tomorrow and is going to be willing to pay full property taxes on undeveloped property as if it was developed. There's no scenario where we will get substantial tax revenue for a number of years, whether we approve or disapprove this. At least now we have an opportunity to put a cap on the number of years it will be that we will start actually earning significant tax revenue, as opposed to the 20-plus years and ongoing if we leave things as is. If a project of the scope was done 15, 12, or even 10 years ago, we would be reaping the tax benefits today. Any developer of that area will be wanting an abatement. I think we can all agree upon that. The longer we wait for this area to be developed, the more leverage the developer will have for an abatement. Waiting another 5, 10, or 20 years will just further exacerbate things, just get us back to where we are today, or possibly even a worse point. If we vote against the abatement, we will not be getting anything remotely close to $700,000 in the next, I think I mentioned this already, in the upcoming years, because there's nothing to get taxes on in that area. Because of that, I'll be voting in favor for this abatement, as I don't want history to repeat itself yet again and wait another 20 years to have a shot at a completed tax earning development. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Prakash?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, first of all, I would like to thank everyone of our residents who showed up here meeting after meeting for a public discussion and provide their input. This project is better because of that participation and input, and I'm very proud to say this, that our town staff and our town council here have been very patient and have been very diligent about taking into consideration everything that has been discussed, has been put forth, has been negotiated, re-put forth. So this has been a lot of iterations, and I'm really proud that everybody has been truly patient. And most importantly, I would like to thank the town manager and the staff for providing this council and the residents of Rocky Hill very timely and valuable insights. Again, this is a topic worth debating, and I think we have given this topic all the due time it deserves. So I think this is a time to move forward and make some decisions, and I think that's how we feel here, probably all of us, one way or the other. So I'm at that point as myself, and so I will just start with some history here, right? And I think this has been talked about a little bit, but I just wanted to, for people at home, I just wanted to start with that history, because the Ames building used to be the headquarters for the Ames discount store, and it sits directly across the street from our town green, and has been vacant for over 15 years. And during this time, it has struggled to generate developer interest, and town residents have been frustrated for many years. Many of those town residents have seen no redevelopment plan that has emerged through several past administrations. Now, fast forwarding to this administration, after coming to office in 2019, this administration made Ames redevelopment a top priority. I commend the mayor for starting a public-private partnership and working diligently with the Connecticut DECD to get the Ames site qualified for a state brownfield grant. This administration has also developed a feasible plan to create a walkable town center directly around that 12-acre parcel. In addition, this mixed-use project has the potential of infusing millions of dollars in the local economy. Folks, this plan is not perfect. No plan is perfect. But yes vote tonight for this project is a vote to incentivize responsible economic development in our community. It is a vote to revitalize our main street, and it is a vote for progress on walkable town center, which we all want so badly. A no vote, however, is for status quo. Don't take my word for it. On April 23rd, 2021, Representative Kerry Wood told the Rear Reminder, quote, "After many discussions on priorities for the town, there was no question that the Ames property redevelopment was top on the list. We will create hundreds of construction jobs as well as permanent jobs and greatly increase the tax base on a property that has long been dormant. Our downtown will have more interconnectivity and truly be a wonderful place to live, work, and recreate," unquote. More recently, last Friday, on March 3rd, according to the Hartford Courant, Representative Wood said, quote, "It took us this long because it required a public-private partnership. This is a very expensive project to get going," unquote. Well, thanks to the current administration, we have a public-private partnership at last. In the same article, according to the Hartford Courant, Lieutenant Governor Susan Bacevich said, quote, "It's not a partisan issue. Everybody wins. You get a cleaned up property, you get economic development, you get more housing," unquote. I agree with our Lieutenant Governor. It should not be a partisan issue. So again, for the folks watching at home, this plan is not perfect. No plan is perfect. But let's not be the enemy of the good. Again, a yes vote for this project tonight is a vote to incentivize a responsible economic development in our community. It is a vote to revitalize our Main Street, and it is a vote for progress on walkable town center. So I will be voting for this resolution, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Sure, just a couple quick notes. Over 20 years ago, Ames headquarters vacated their property, and according to our tax assessor, they have, through remaining taxes and stipulated judgments, I guess has paid $2.26 million over the past 20 years to the town. They would have paid $4.7 million had they been in operation as if nothing went wrong. Again, an estimate out of our town assessor. But the number that strikes me is that if we had developed the property with even a quasi-similar project to what we have here before us, over the past 20 years, we would have exceeded $8 million in taxes. So I view the $8.8 million plus dollars that of lost revenue because we haven't acted in the past 20 years as a whole. And when you're in a hole, you stop digging, and we have an opportunity to dig out. And I vote in favor. I will be voting in favor of this tax abatement.
Thank you. Okay.
Guess I'm next.
You're next.
So we started this process back on January 9th. It was our first economic development subcommittee meeting, which agreed to move this forward to the town council. Since that meeting, we've had either 4 or 5 separate meetings had public comments at all of those meetings. Those public comments have been heard, and because of those public comments, some changes were made to the original draft of this agreement. First, the original agreement was for 10 years. It's been shortened to 9 years. The tax payment per year was originally set at $62,583. That was increased to $80,000. In years 8 and 9, the property be reappraised. Original contract did not call for a reappraisal. It was going to sit at the set amount. So those comments did drive change, and we did act upon those changes. I, like Councilor Prakash, have a couple of quotes from the Hartford Courant article. And I won't repeat the exact ones, but Senator Matt Lesser, this was an eyesore, a contaminated piece of land that we couldn't do anything about. I'm sorry, I can't think of a higher priority than an eyesore right on Main Street. That was really a blight on this community. Representative Wood, it took us this long because it was a required public-private partnership, which we have founded. This is an expensive project to get going. We need every dollar we could from the state of Connecticut, and they're here with us the whole time to help the town of Rocky Hill attract one of the best developers there is in the area of residential real estate. And Lieutenant Governor Bysowitz said supporting this kind of project is important for the state for several reasons. About 10% of the new apartments are being set aside for so-called workforce housing with rents affordable to people in lower and lower medium wage jobs. It will also foster a stronger, more walkable town center in the future. Everybody wins. You get a cleaned up property, you get economic development, you get more housing. I think those are important sentiments from our state leadership. I also look at this project with a long-term view. The long-term view is we're making an investment into our future. This property has sat vacant for 20 years. There's a reason it sat vacant. There was a cost to develop it. So now we're going to put, as a town, an investment by deferring tax revenue for a payback into our future. It's long-term planning. Eventually, this pays back to the residents of the town. We have to give something up front to do so. The other piece on this, and I do appreciate those that come from the public and make comments at our meetings, because we do hear them. They may not feel we hear them. But there's also a couple of other projects that came up in public hearing in town. There's the Foundry project. Now, I know I sat on the park committee for the Foundry project, whether it be 8 or 10 years ago, a project that was going to be completed in a short period of time, to the point the town was looking to buy a mower to mow the park. Well, we're now 8 years down the road. The project hasn't moved forward for various reasons, but nobody's come forward to say, how come we're not reaping a tax benefit? We always hear that the project's not complete, but they don't mention the fact that we're losing the revenue on a project that we should have been collecting the revenue. Town Center West, we know that project wasn't complete. We heard the other night about the developer who committed to do various pieces for the town, and that was never done. But we don't hear again about the lost tax revenue by not finishing a development. So here we have a developer that Representative Wood has said is one of the best residential developers in the state, and why it's important to work with them. We have a unique property that we have an opportunity to get developed that in 20 years no one was able to move forward. So those are the reasons why I'm supporting it. And like Councilor Prakash, I agree, no deal is perfect. We will never make everybody happy. Look, the 9 of us on this council will not agree. I knew that coming into it. We had some differences. But what I will say, this council will have a professional discussion. There's never a personal attack, and that I appreciate. It's okay that we have differing opinions. We have 20,000 residents in the town of Rocky Hill. They won't all agree with each other, and they won't all agree with us. But we're trying to do the best we can for the planning of the town. Us as a town, we don't think this is the best deal. But I also know the developer doesn't think it's the best deal. So somewhere in the middle, we've done our job by going back and forth and kept everybody unhappily happy. So that's why I want to see this project move forward. We've sat on it, we've discussed it. I think there's a benefit for the town. I think there's a long-term plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm not going to say a lot. I think everyone knows how hard our administration has been working, going back and forth. Everyone has sort of said something that I agree with. And I will say, you know, in 2019, when our administration came in, we did promise to change the culture of how we do things. And that started with long-range planning and fiscal responsibility, putting away the debit cards and the credit cards and looking at how we're spending and looking to grow the economy. And one of the challenges, in addition to, you know, the pandemic and the social injustice and everything else that was happening, you know, 3 or 4 months after our administration came in, you know, was looking at Ames, right? And for so many years, we were told there is absolutely nothing we can do as a town because it's privately owned, right? And this was the first administration who came in and said, that's nonsense. We need to recognize the business community as a stakeholder and as community partners. And that's precisely what we did. And I remember Ray and I and our former town manager, we reached out to the then owner, and everyone thought it was crazy and no one, this was not going to go anywhere. And we sat down and we had lunch over a meatball salad. Carbone's was relatively new. And I said to that person, I said, what is it that you need from us as a town for you to be successful? Because that's what it's all about, right? And we hear the governor talking about it. We hear the lieutenant governor talking about those public-private partnerships that are so, so critical in the state of Connecticut. And I will tell you that we never give credit to that prior owner because he was so incredible. And he was willing to sit down and he was willing to take a look at the plan of conservation and development. He was willing to come to us and say, hey, I have somebody who's interested. This is what they're thinking. I don't really know. We didn't get involved at all in that process, but he just put it out there enough for him and us to recognize that, hey, the community is looking for this, and this person wants to deliver that. And if it didn't match, he would say, okay, I'm going to pass on this. And that wasn't in his best interest, right? But he was willing to work with us because we reached out to him. And that's really how the whole process kind of got started. And we're in a really good place right now. I want to just point out, numerically, there's just so many different numbers that you see on social media, and sometimes people, will make comments or send emails about the numbers. And so I do think it's important. I'm just going to tell you very quickly from a very high level where those numbers are, okay? So right now, as of 2022, we were collecting $62,000 a year on that property, right? If we do nothing, we're going to continue to collect $62,000 a year. What this agreement does, in addition to the long-term planning that Councilor Greenspan and others have alluded to and talked about, and how this is an investment, in 2023, okay, in this year, we're going to collect about $800,000. Right? That's between the permitting, that's between the taxes, the real estate tax that's fixed, the personal property tax. It's 13 times what we are collecting in 2022, right? And that's not that $80,000 that everyone is saying, geez, it's only $80,000 a year after that. It's not. It's about $280,000 that we're collecting. So the town is not losing this number that I see people are talking about on social media. And frankly, that money's not there, right? And it is a business decision, and there's give and take in every business decision. I think this is a good deal for the town. And so for that reason, we're going to call a vote. And so all in favor of the motion that Deputy Mayor Sharmet has on the table?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay. There you have it. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for your opinions, and take a motion to adjourn.
Madam Mayor, motion to adjourn.